Hi, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'm Dr. Cobbles Turbyville with Horses and Humans Research Foundation. And tonight is going to be an exciting night because we're going to talk about Cheryl Mayola's book project. And I'm going to turn it over to Tara Mahoney to discuss it.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for watching on YouTube and another time. We are so excited about how many guests we have here today and some incredible thought leaders in the industry. So I get the privilege of moderating, which means I get to interrupt all these incredible thought leaders, which is definitely a fantasy of mine. So we're going to have a fantastic time. Let's just go through a little bit of housekeeping. Put yourself on mute. I see everybody is. Thanks so much for respecting that. Stay on camera, off camera, whatever's comfortable for you. We are going to go through a little bit of a welcome just so that everybody can introduce themselves. So if you haven't put your name in the chat, let us know who you are, where you're from, and what you're doing in the industry. This tonight is all about collaboration. About sharing, about learning from each other. You know, that is really the basis of Horses and Humans Research Foundation mission. And we're just so privileged. I have the honor of serving on the board. And so that means there's absolutely no shame in my game on saying, hit the donate button. $5, $50, 5,000, you know, your house in Cabo, whatever you'd like to donate, we will accept. So thank you all so much for supporting us. It makes a huge difference. And we love giving money away to rigorous research. So tonight we're going to start by letting all the contributing authors introduce themselves, say their names, their organizations, and their credentials, maybe what chapter they were in. Please feel free to put any questions, thoughts, anything into the chat. This is your chance to say, hey, your chapter was terrible. No, I mean, I really loved it. So let's start with any of the authors. How about if I pitch it on over to Nancy as our board president and fearless leader, and just have you introduce yourself first.
Thank you, Kara. My name is Nancy Pascal. I'm with Healing and Learning Through Equine Relationships, which is in the upstate of South Carolina. Also do very little bit of sidebar consulting. And my chapter was towards the end. It was don't put the cart before the horse. It was the business side of things. And I'm very honored to be part of this group, and very honored to have been asked to be part of the book. And to be part of HHRF, because really, to me, HHRF is the culmination of what we're all trying to do, which is to be more effective and be more efficient in how we work with people and ensure the well-being of our equine partners.
Okay, so we have a lot of authors on here. Why don't we just kind of do a free for all? And you kind of say your name. Cheryl, I'm going to start with you because, of course, you are the commander in chief here and our fearless leader, as well as Nancy. But with this project, we'll start with you introducing yourselves, and then as we can kind of go through, see what order you see. But rather than me kind of pitch it to each person as a ping pong, let's see how this goes with introducing yourselves.
Sure. So should I pick the next person to go?
Ooh, I love that. And then the next person picks the next person.
Cool. Okay. Well, as I think I know a lot of you here, I'm Cheryl Mayola, and I would like to say that this book was my idea, but it was actually originally pitched to me by an acquisitions editor at Elsevier, who said that she had read one of my articles that was published on my dissertation and thought that this was something more people needed to know about, and that there was a lack of literature in our field on equine-assisted services. And so I was like, heck yeah, there is, but I don't know what I'm going to say. And so chatting with, I think maybe Nancy and Pebbles and Tara, I was like, I think other people need to talk about what they're experts at, and we all need to talk about our niches and come together, because that's one of the weaknesses in our field is we have so many amazing people with so much talent, and we don't share and talk a lot. And that's probably because we have horses and we're super busy. More than that, we don't want to share and talk, because we seem to really enjoy getting together and things like this. And and being able to connect and build a stronger community. And I truly feel that that is the future of our industry, along with the research and collaboration and education that HHRF is doing as well. And so, I mean, I was absolutely thrilled, and the project could not have happened without all of your creative expertise and energy, keeping me accountable to making sure that the project actually came to fruition after everyone put so much work into it. And I also want to give a shout out to my faithful partner, Malika Albright, who was with me the whole way editing, because she is an amazing editor. And I don't think this would have happened in 3 years. It would probably have been like 10 without her. So
Well done.
does that mean, Malika, you get to go next?
There you go.
Okay. I would love to. Thanks. I'm just so happy to be here. And I actually benefited from getting to read everybody's chapter. And I have to say, I just feel like I'm in the company of greatness, because I just enjoyed reading and I learned so much. And I thank Cheryl for having the ability to draw from so many different areas that also oddly resonate in what I think are real big shifts in how we go about doing what we do. I am the owner of Freckles Farm. I'm right next door to Cheryl at Main Source Counseling. And I wrote the chapter, Not Just Horsing Around, an EP's Perspective, and also got to work with Cheryl on the natural therapeutic aspects of horses. I guess we've known each other for about a decade. And I think that's really all I would say is I'm anxious to hear other people talk about the experience of writing, maybe reading other chapters, and just maybe what y'all are up to now. And I'm going to throw it to Stacy Carter.
Hey, thank you, Malika. And thank you, Cheryl, because I agree that this book has just been so wonderful to read and eye-opening, and hearing all these wonderful perspectives. And I'm with Heart-Centered Horsemanship. So my chapter was from a trainer's perspective, and how equine-assisted therapy has influenced how I work with horses as a trainer. And so I have shifted to being a horse trainer to being a human trainer from that experience. And I work with teens in mental health, as well as horse owners, helping develop relationship. I teach people how to communicate in the language of the horse, and have recently been especially interested in nervous system regulation and co-regulation. I'm a yoga teacher, so I blend yoga into my practice. And this idea of polyvagal theory has been very eye-opening. So this idea that we can bring our energy up and down, and the horses respond to that, and we can practice this regulation with the horse, and then how that applies to doing this with ourselves. So as a trainer, I get a lot of opportunities. I work with a lot of rescue horses and horses that have had trauma, and have learned how I can help them through different, like I do a lot of hands-on kind of things through the body, that mind-body connection, how we can access the mind through the body. And so I've learned so much, and the horses just keep teaching me more, and y'all are all teaching me more. So thank you so much.
There you go.
And I'm seeing on the chat, Deborah Thompson was the last person that hey, Deborah.
Good evening. And I'm Deborah Thompson from Whitakers, North Carolina, and I've got low bandwidth, so if I come and go, I apologize for that. But I wrote a perspective on from the field, Gifts from Above, which really looks at starting EAS later in life. So I did not have the opportunity of growing up with horses. I was in 55 or 56 when I had my first encounter with a horse, and fell in love immediately, and really felt the nurturing and the impact of the horse in many different perspectives. And so I began my pursuit there of learning more about EAS, and co-founded a company, Follow My Lead, which really focuses on personal development and leadership. And for me, this book was really about, my perspective was, it's never too late to get started. You have a lot to offer, and by looking at others in the field and collaborating, I think that is the most perfect opportunity to continue to growth, and we all have opportunity to learn from each other. So for me, this book is just a wealth of knowledge, and gives different perspectives, and it's important for us all to look at the research and what's available and how we can all come together to promote EAS and continue this growth. Very critical. So it was very enjoyable for me, and I have learned so much from the book and from everyone, all the authors. And so I am going to hand it over to Suzanne.
Thank you for the handoff. I also was a late in life horse person, so I really appreciate that perspective. Now I've been at it a while, so if you live long enough, you get to do it for a while. Cheryl, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, and we go way back to before you had your degree, so that was very cool. I really appreciated being asked to participate in this, and Cheryl said, you know, pick a topic, and I gave her 2, and she actually went along with both of them. So I ended up doing 2 chapters, one by myself and one with Sharon Wilsey. The first, I had started out as a therapeutic riding instructor, so a lot of my therapy when I got into practice included riding, and I had noticed that people could talk to me when they were riding about things that couldn't talk to me any other time, and I was very curious about that. And so finally, I ended up experimenting with some of the trauma processing methods like EMDR and brain spotting, and thought, shoot, let's try them on horseback. So we did, and that's what I ended up writing about. And my secret desire is to hope that somewhere some graduate students gonna read this and go, oh, let's research that, because I'm so small and I'm not affiliated with the university, and so that's really not an option for me. But I hope someday somebody will, because I think it's really powerful the way horses, their movement and their connection piece just provides such a great opportunity for people to work through trauma experiences, as many of you already know. The other thing that I pitched to Cheryl was I had discovered horse speak, which is another approach towards equine language, trying to use their body language to talk with them in their language as opposed to having them learn our language. And so I ended up collaborating with Sharon Wilsey, who was the one who figured all this out. And she wrote a chapter on horse speak herself, and then we wrote one together on how we used it in therapy. She became my equine specialist for about 3 months or so. And it was just fabulous to work with her. She was such a good equine specialist. And so anyway, it was just a great collaboration. So we wrote about what we learned from that. And I think we're in the process now of developing some training courses that are going to go into that, some clinics. So hopefully those will be out, I don't know, someday. So that's kind of how I got into this.
Who would you like to pass it off to?
What's that?
Who would you like to pass it off to?
Octavia, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Okay, well, as many of you know, I'm kind of a founder of things. That's my métier, I guess you could say. I'm retired. And when this whole thing got started back in the 1960s, nobody knew anything about the higher education that it has gone to. So for me, just writing a little bit of history, but seeing where this all went has been a lifelong joy for me. And I started riding at the age of 8. So I've been around horses for all my time. And it might be interesting to you to know that my very first engagement with this kind of work was at McLean Hospital in Belmont, Massachusetts, before there was a NARA, before there was really anything. And I knew nothing. And we were involved with what they called milieu therapy. And I was the horse person. And they asked me to please leave my coat at the door, because when I came from the barn, nobody really liked me very much. So I would drop my coat at the barn and I'd go in and talk about what I noticed. And noticing how different everybody got to be once they came from their locked ward down to my stable and started riding and working with me. And so that got me going onto my career. So that's me. And I'm going to pass it off to Laurie, because she was my co-author of that chapter of the beginnings.
Okay, so just as moderator, I'm going to speed this along, right? Because we love the introductions, but it's already 7:19 and we want to talk about the book. So let's see if we can just say our names, organizations, and our chapter, and then we'll be able to talk about, you know, the book a little bit as interaction. So we've got a lot of authors on here and we don't want to spend the 30 minutes of it introducing ourselves, if that's okay. So I'm sorry if I'm being a bully, but let's do this kind of a little quicker with the introduction so we can actually get into the meat of the book. Thanks.
Okay, my name's Laura Rinker, and I too am retired. And don't let anybody tell you that you have nothing to do when you're retired. I was with Pebbles and Octavia in chapter 2, and I find that the book is, you know, I teach a college course every 2 years, or every other year. I'm working on a heady curriculum, so just having all of this information is such a, you know, help in trying to be that lifelong learner and pass all of that on. Okay, and I'm going to pass it on to Ruth Dismuke. Blakely. Hi.
You did that very well. Thank you, Lori. All right. Well, hi, I'm Ruth Dismuke Blakely. I'm a speech pathologist and lifelong horsewoman from New Mexico. Operate a full-time therapy practice that's incorporated hippotherapy for 41 years, and am a AHA faculty member. And my chapter was co-written with who I'm going to pass it off to in a minute. Medical therapy enhanced with hippotherapy, and I'm going to pass it to Joanne.
Good afternoon or morning or evening, whatever. Hi, I'm Joanne Benjamin, physical therapist in Los Angeles, California. And gosh, yes, worked with Ruth and our cohort, also Karen Gardner, who's an OT. So we had the opportunity to collaborate between PT, OT, and speech and really accentuate how the horse can be incorporated into therapy from a medical perspective. So it was wonderful to read all of the different ways that horses can benefit humans, and learn so much about how that really comes to be. And oh my goodness, there's so many people on this list, and I don't know who to pass it on to. So I'm going to throw a dart, and Dr. Susan Sherman, is that somebody who would have contributed to the book?
How about we go to
Cheryl says
Bettina?
no.
Nope, that's okay.
What?
How about Bettina? You're right next to me.
Sounds great. Thank you, Bettina.
Yeah. My name is Bettina Schultz Job. My husband and I founded Natural Lifemanship. We are located in Brenham, Texas. I had to look up our chapter name. I couldn't remember it, but our name was, or the chapter that I co-wrote with Kathleen Cho, who I'll have go next, was called An In-Depth Approach to Relational Work with Equines, Natural Lifemanship. So it was kind of an overview of our approach, to a very broad overview of our approach. And we were able to share 2 different cases in that chapter. And so I loved we've done a lot of these chapters that are about our approach to therapy or work with horses. But often we don't get to have enough space to really breathe life into it. So I loved being able to do that. So Kathleen and I wrote that chapter together, and Kathleen did a couple other chapters too, so she can share about those.
Thanks, Bettina.
Thank you. I'm Kathleen Cho. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Austin, Texas. I have a hybrid equine and office practice, and I did have the privilege of writing co-authoring the chapter with Bettina. I also wrote a standalone chapter myself on self-care for EAS providers. How do we prevent burnout, take care of ourselves while we're trying to take care of other people? And then I also was a co-author on a chapter on bringing spiritual connections into the work, and one on internal family systems and equine connected EMDR. So really enjoyed all the opportunities to write on lots of diverse topics, and appreciate Cheryl bringing us all together. It was a wonderful experience.
Kathleen, I'm going to jump in for 1 second because I just wanted to quickly say Dr. Sherman and Dr. Lear are both just here today. And those were 2 of my professors in my PhD program who I did research projects with, and I'm just like super thrilled they're here. So just giving a quick shout out. Sorry.
That's great. I'm not sure who to pass to because my other co-authors are not here, so I don't really recognize anyone else.
Anybody else on here? Nancy, did you introduce your chapter? Or John? Who else is on here?
I would suggest that we let folks ask questions and
Very
just,
good. There
that
you
would be
go.
my.
Okay. So all the authors, take yourselves off mute. Ready for this fun? Okay. So it's going to be a little chaos, but let's see how this goes. So first question that we got when we were talking about doing this webinar is we all just said we learned so much from other chapters. We're going to each take a minute to say, you know, which chapter really changed the game for us. So I'm going to start. I did the chapter on serving those who serve. I'm a trauma counselor with the military and specialize in special forces, active duty, decompression, and resiliency to kind of keep in the fight and preservation of the family and force. One thing in the counseling world that we don't or aren't supposed to talk about is the spirituality piece. So that was just thrilling for me to hear someone go out there, say it, working on it, because we all know it and feel it. Science has a hard time dealing with it, but that was the most thrilling chapter for me to read, and I just couldn't get enough of it. So that was my favorite chapter and what I learned. How about now we pitch it on over to somebody else? Ready? Off mute, go for it. This is called the therapeutic silence.
Okay, I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk.
Yoga.
Okay, so I think it's hard to pick a chapter because you know, as I'm working on a curriculum for the world, I guess was what I'd call it, through HEDI, because we're trying to look at, you know, how can we bring education about EAS to all the countries, all the methodology, what they have, what they don't have, all their systems. And, you know, it's a collaboration, and it's looking at that there's a lot of ways to get to what our goal is. Our goal is to help people through interactions with horses. And, you know, it's not a recipe. It's not, you know, just one way. And this just opens your eyes to, you know, that there's so much methodology. So, and the other thing I guess I didn't really enjoy, I really enjoyed the little vignettes that people talked about their experiences. I'd love to see a book of just that, because it just gives you, you know, a good feeling, but also that people got there in a lot of different ways and that type of thing. So that's what I'd say. I can't totally pick a chapter, I guess. They're all very informative. And I think that Cheryl did a great job bringing it all together.
All right, I'm going to jump in with a real quick one. I had never heard of heterarchy before, hierarchy versus heterarchy, and the idea that what's best for all is best for one. And it capsulated what I've always thought about horses, but it put a new terminology in there. So I thank you for that. A lot of this is things that I have seen or heard about before, but I love it when somebody gives me a whole new terminology to use. So there you go, like that.
I'll go quick too. Like for me, I mean, I read everyone's chapters many, many times. And so I feel like there's some sort of encyclopedia in my brain right now.
Oh, so you have edits to have to do? Oh,
let's not go
that's the
into
part
that.
of the inside information, right? How
That's
many
the after
we all
party.
sent you? It was hurting.
But Mike Tomlinson's chapter for me, like I've never really seen much of the veterinary or science side, and some of the things he said were like mind blowing to me. And I've been around horses for decades, like the eyeball thing. Like I don't know if anyone else read that, but like how a horse's eyeballs like can go into their sockets and to protect them from predators. So like when my horse is rubbing on me, she literally can just like tuck her eyeball away. Like that blew my mind.
I'm really curious as to those of us that weren't authors, what kind of questions that the other folks have, because I love this idea of a chance to ask us questions. What a great idea to give people this opportunity.
So anybody, feel free to take yourself off. You can put them in through the chat. It's difficult to read because I go like this and really close to the camera. So anybody have a question or a thought? I see Steven. Awesome. Great. Go for it.
Well, I was very scared of horses, and Cheryl was very kind being on her committee. And anyway, I guess the question I have is, it seems like everybody can come to being with horses with their own baggage or stuff or whatever you want to call it. And I guess I wonder, like, some of how you all do, like Cheryl did with me, and kind of make the bridge between equine and the client or whatever. Does that make any sense? Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheryl, any thoughts about that since you've worked with Steven?
Yeah, I think like as far as the book goes, there's a million different ways. And so when I was sitting there trying to think about, oh, how do I write a book about this? I was like, there's not one way to do it. There's not one way to grow with horses. There's not one way to relate. And, you know, why not ask all these people who have been doing it longer, better, in different ways than me? And you know, I think that way we reach more people. Like, you know, I was a good match for you, and Bettina will be a good match for someone else, and Stacy will be a great match for someone else, but we can't all help everyone. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where I went.
Well, I think what you're saying is that the reason we all do this is to serve others, right? We're all coming at this through healing. We're all coming at this through the love of equine well-being and that partnership. So, you know, Bettina, you have any thoughts on that kind of concept and what you've experienced with this?
Oh, sure. One of the things I love about this book, and there are a few other like collaborative books that have been out there, and what I love the most when I'm reading them is starting to notice the ways that many of us, even though we're coming from different perspectives, we're coming to the same things, right? Like that, even though our work might look a little bit different, and sometimes it even looks a whole lot different. But when you start really reading it and looking for the similarities, those of us who are really out there, like in the trenches, doing this work and working with clients, we're kind of coming to the same things. Sometimes we're giving it slightly different or very different language, but a lot of times slightly different language. We have a little bit of different way of talking about it. And I do realize our work's not all the same. It is different, which is why we can have an amazing book like this. But I'm always fascinated by the ways that I'm like, look at the where I'll see where we're coming to the same stuff. Sometimes even coming to the same stuff where I'll think, I like came to this amazing thing, right? Because we're doing this work with horses and people. And then I'll realize, oh, like somebody else figured that thing out 20 years ago, you know? And so like, there's nothing new. I mean, I hate to say it that way. That's what fascinates me. There's nothing new, right? Like if we are really seeking the welfare and the healing and the growth of our horses and our people, however we might be serving people, we're often coming to really similar things together. I think that's what I love about this book and project.
Right. So, I mean, you're just recapping the millennial, you know, the history of horses and humans partnering forever, right? So are we just recreating, you know, what the importance of this, right? Client-centered, horse-based. So absolutely, you know, what this looks like. And now we're starting to finally understand it through science and through these types of collaborations rather than these little microcosms of, hey, that worked. Wow. So really well said. Yeah. Stacy, go ahead. Anybody else?
So, I mean, something that I think about a lot is this idea that connection is sort of a natural state. You know, I tell my kids that, you know, love is our natural state, gratitude is our natural state, and things get in the way and things block. And I've learned that with horses. It's like connection is their natural state, but if we slow down and pick up on when those brace, block, resistance things come in, and just slow down and process it as it comes up. And it's a process. That's a big deal too, because I think once, especially I have worked with a lot of young horses that had trauma early on, and their stuff can come back up very easily. And so I'm very interested in teaching the the process for how to handle things as they come up rather than fixing it. We don't fix it, we create a space where things can rebalance and we hold that safe space. And it's, there's simplicity, but it's not easy, but, and I think, what I've learned about working with therapists and integrated into working with horses, it's just keeps teaching me all the time, about the process.
That's such a good point, right? Trauma, for many is the event that, define their life. And through this work, we're realizing it's an event, right? It is something that, has occurred or whatever, issue or leadership or whatever someone might be coming to us for, coming to the horse for. Absolutely. So well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a great question here. So Kelly, is there anything that you wish you had included in your chapter that you didn't now looking back? Or any of the guests right now, anything that you wish for book 2? How about that, Cheryl? Oh, by the way, someone wanted to know where the book was. Integrating Horses, right, into Healing. It's on Amazon and it's also at Elsevier. Elsevier is the so yep, you could buy it at either of the places. So absolutely worth the money. So anything that anyone wish was included or wish now looking back like, oh, I wish I put in more case studies or I wish I did that.
Cheryl, I kind of wish we'd written the other chapter that we've now written and included it.
I know, right? Yeah.
I really regret that we didn't, get there until now.
Yeah. Malika and I just finished writing a chapter to be determined where it goes on like the words we choose when we work with horses and how important they are to the process.
Octavia, that dovetails with heterarchy and some of the new, ways of kind of looking at things.
I think one of the things that's been interesting for me that I've kind of gotten into lately was more the polyvagal, is that not only do we have a nervous system that operates, the horses have a very similar autonomic nervous system. So we're all reacting to each other. And it makes an interesting mix when we start to put all that stuff together.
Yeah, we need a whole polyvagal chapter.
The thing I regret, I didn't put more pictures in my. I wish I put more pictures in. It didn't occur to me.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
My question is for Nancy, because I feel like Nancy is the queen of collaboration and connecting people. What do you feel like is the future of collaboration? Like, how does this tie into where our field is going?
Wow, that's a big question.
Sorry.
That's okay. What I loved about reading everybody else's work that ties into all of that is that if we can all leave our egos at the door, not have to be right, not have to, as was said earlier, it's not one recipe. Pebbles and I were talking about cake baking. That's another discussion today. And I think the key is to find people who challenge your thinking, make you really dive in. Hopefully there will be collaborations that come out of this book between authors, between hopefully graduate students or others who might be entering our field, researchers that are ready to go, okay, let's do a comparative study of different methods. To me, that's critical, but we have to be willing to let that happen and not get our feelings hurt, right? And realize we are here for the improving the lives of our clients or patients or whomever, and ensuring the well-being for our horses. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. That was beautiful.
And Nancy, I love that idea of you gotta, being okay with change and growth and not being right. And I appreciate you and Octavia. And I talked in my chapter about Barbara Rector, who is just such a hero for me. and all the people who pioneered this work back when they were the woo-woos.
I have a question, sort of dovetailing off of Cheryl's question to Nancy. My name is Elsa, by the way. I unfortunately have not read the book yet, but I will. And I am very new, I would say, to the field. I guess I'm not even in the field yet. I am in Central New York, and I have a very young sanctuary operation. We're hoping to start some EAS programming. And my question is, how do you foresee mainstreaming this type of service? I see collaboration playing a key role in that. Clearly, research you've touched on, and there are a few folks out there that I know are trying to do this. And so I'm just curious how you see this practice being mainstreamed, because clearly it is so beneficial and it works, but it's really hard to pinpoint why it works, if that makes sense.
Sure. And we need to get you connected with Joanne Miller, because she has managed to do amazing work with EAS and sanctuary rescue horses. So she'll be a great resource for you. I think the key is to do the research and then disseminate it. Make sure that we aren't talking amongst ourselves, but that we're getting it out to the neurobiologists, the psychologists, the medical professions, social workers, anybody who can be a conduit of a referral source, and developing ways to study the questions that we haven't figured out how to answer yet, and recognizing it and listing them and being really honest about what are the questions we don't have answers to. But a key piece is the language, right? It's that shared terminology, because without that, we don't know what we're talking about. If we don't know what we're talking about, there's nobody else that's going to know what we're talking about either. Does that answer?
Absolutely. And I would like to connect with you after this if possible.
Could I add a little bit to that?
Well, first of all, Elsa, please join the education committee. How about that plug? Okay, now go ahead, Ruth.
I think you have to always bear in mind too that EAS, that terminology is extremely broad. We're talking about so many different ways that we're utilizing horses to be a healing force for our patients, our clients, ourselves, whatever. But I want to reassure you, Elsa, that in certain aspects of that broader piece of equine-assisted services are pretty mainstream. And when I talk about that, I mean, first of all, certainly therapeutic riding is very mainstream, and that's a huge force, not only in the United States, but worldwide. So, again, you can nuance the terminology a little bit. Then, and in terms of therapy interventions, certainly within occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech language pathology, we have endorsements from our national therapy associations. There's a pretty darn respectable body of research, last count 113 or so peer-reviewed journal articles and a number of meta-analyses supporting the way we medical therapists incorporate hippotherapy, which really pairs down to how the amazing value of the equine movement and its impact on human physiology across the spectrum. And that is actually gaining in a lot of, has gained a great deal of acceptance. I mean, there's still a lot of work to do, but there's, and certainly the mental health professions, all the applications of incorporating horses into mental health. I think there's a broader acceptance, at least in the therapy interventions, straight out therapy interventions across the 4 fields, and in adaptive or therapeutic riding. Those are pretty mainstream, and we just got to keep pushing pushing to make it even, higher quality, and just because horses are essential and we need to preserve our right to benefit from what they can offer us.
Can I add
Really
something?
well said. Oh, yeah, go ahead, TV.
Okay. Speaking as someone who introduced this to the college level with Centenary University, and Laurie's been there, and others who are with Marnie, of course. And to me, starting really encouraging a whole bunch of universities and colleges to offer introductory courses, whether it goes anywhere, and to make sure that the education people are there, the psychology majors are there, everybody who might pre-med, anything like that, to encourage those students at the college level to at least hear about what is out there. Because speaking personally, over the 25 years I worked at Centenary, dozens and dozens of students who never thought they'd get into this got into it because they took an introductory course and said, yeah, that's for me. So I think anybody who can work with your local college, whatever it may be, university, to get some kind of introductory course going, then that younger generation will be well informed and maybe go out there and do something in the future.
I want to add too, like cross-disciplinary workshops and programs. I mean, I think that's how we mainstream. Working with medical students, like Octavia said, working with nursing students, like we are now at Main Source, working with social workers and foster care, and PTs and OTs going in and collaborating with, ones that are in the office practicing. And I think that's how we get out there, because we get our referrals and our money from like the MDs and the DOs that believe in what we do, I think.
I have
That's a
kind
really
of
good
a,
thing.
oh, sorry. I have kind of a random question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So I'm not sure if this has anything to do with any of the chapters or not, but at our center, we're kind of working on client metrics for grant purposes. And so we have pre and post tests for each of our levels of therapeutic riding. We don't really we have them for groundwork a little bit, but not for like a school group or anything that would come kind of more short term. We also don't have it for hippotherapy. And so I'm wondering if people have there's no standardized test as far as I know, and there's nothing that we have that actually like mashes up hippotherapy with therapeutic riding. There's the hippotherapy test, or sorry, the therapy test that, a speech therapist can do or an OT can do, or PT, whatever. But there's nothing that kind of incorporates those skills or those goals with horses. And so I think I don't know if there's any chapter in the book that talks more about that, or if any of you smart people have any way to go about getting more or collaborating with us on, doing some sort of test that we can see the before and after.
Perfect. Yeah, I think Nancy has an answer for you. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah, I've been in your shoes, and what I would say is this. First of all, if you're doing pre and post and you've done it internally, that's probably not as strong as if you can use an independent measure. And we at Halter actually borrowed one right out of hippotherapy. We use one called the PDCAT, which is the Pediatric Assessment of Disabilities Computer Aided Test. I'll put it in the chat box here in a minute for you. And that we now have 3 years worth of data with the University of Kentucky. And what I like about it is it's functional assessment. I'll be really honest, all of you who I love and admire as horse people, don't shoot me. But the world doesn't care if they can post on the right diagonal. The world does care if maybe they can put their grooming box away because that translates to something in the home, or they can dress themselves, or those kinds of functional things. And so that's why I like that assessment. And we do a lot with the University of Kentucky. They also have a free instrument. You do have to go through their training. It's called the CANS. It's the Child and Adolescent Needs and Strengths Assessment. And if you are in this industry, that is free to you. And so I will put that link in as well. What I like about that is you pick the questions out of a whole battery, and it also looks at strengths. We've cut, we are really good at focusing on where people struggle, but we do know from research that if we build on existing strengths, that actually it makes improvements across the board. So your questions are great. They're really, really on target. And that's exactly, to me, what centers need to be asking, and have that willingness to explore what does that mean? How do they know how do we know what we're doing is effective? And how do we get
Really good
partners
point.
to
Yeah.
do them?
You know,
So
one thing that we're
if
talking
I
a lot
can
about
jump
it. Oh, go ahead, Joanne. Yeah.
Thank you. If I can jump in, because these last two questions dovetail perfectly. So when Nancy was presenting some of these tests that could possibly be used, that is mainstream. So we're using tests that we use as PTs, as OTs, as speech therapists, as psychologists, whatever. And we're making sure that as we incorporate the horses into what we're doing and to benefit our patients or clients or whoever we want to work with, that we're looking at the bigger picture. We're not just looking at, can they post? We're not just looking at, do they sit up straighter on their horse, but how are they functioning? And then what we do have to be a bit careful with, I suppose, is making sure that we're using those tests that are directly related to not only our expertise in terms of what we're doing, but also what our focus is, our outcomes are expected to be, what the goals are of that individual. So it opens up a huge world, which may complicate things a bit, but is the really positive aspect as well. And we don't have to reinvent wheels either, which is also kind of a relief, because there's no sense in starting from scratch. There's lots of resources out there. So thank you, Nancy, for pointing out what some of those are.
You know, one thing that we're talking a lot about is, right, looking at the human side. And, you know, Marcy, one of your heart passion things that you've been working on for so long has been equine well-being. You know, I love that you've pulled that in now in the industry, and it seems like HHRF is really leading with terrific people. Could you say a little bit about, you know, the importance of respecting and working with our partners?
Sure. I thought I just hide, lurk here in the shadows and not get involved in this, but
Marcy's on the board, very involved. Yep.
So I think that, you know, this is such an important point, and I joined late. I'm sorry about that. I got the time wrong. But what I did hear was the importance of language. I know Cheryl has addressed that. My personal fanatical passion is about not saying that we use the horse. I just feel like that language changes the mindset and the behavior. We know that horses are sentient beings, and we are learning more and more that horses can be willing partners, that horses have a natural curiosity, a natural, you know, they seek engagement. And, you know, if you're going to use the horse, you may as well just get a horse-shaped, you know, piece of machinery and plunk somebody on it and just go about your business that way. So what I think we're really looking for is the connection, is what really happens with our individuals, our clients, our patients, when the horse is free to participate and engage. We're also looking, when we talk about research, further into, you know, there is protection for the horse, and that's important. But beyond that, what do we look at coming from the horse? What is the impact on the horse? What may be the benefits for the horse? And what is the whole picture? And I think it's so important that as we move forward, the horse is, you know, a very prominent presence in all that we do. So does that answer it?
Well said. Thank
If
you
I
for
could
being
go on
happy.
and
I
on
think
and
that
on.
all of us have been feeling, right?
Right.
Absolutely. Hey, Jane, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining. Jane wrote an awesome chapter for us with Cheryl's book on Equus Effect. It's great to see you. We've asked, one of the questions was, what inspired you to pick that topic, and anything that you thought you would like to add that you weren't able to put in that first chapter, maybe for book 2. Oh, you're on mute.
Thanks. It's nice to see everyone. I think that because my partner David Sonator and I realized early on that the horses don't really see you unless you're in your body, unless you're present. And so we both got our somatic experiencing practitioner certifications. And so we are able to use that language when we work with people versus how do you feel, or anything to do with stories. And so we just decided that we're really in the business of helping people regulate their nervous systems. So that was the topic we chose. That was the angle. It's not a topic. It's actually the angle that we chose to enter this collaboration with everyone else, or the contribution to the whole picture that everyone seems to be offering and having their variations on it. So we just decided to do that, since that's what we know. And that's what we obviously, I think all of us see that, that the horses are, if you're not present, they're like, where'd you go?
Really good point.
So that's kind of the way we position our work. We work with veterans and with first responders and anyone who's experienced any kind of frontline trauma, and also just regular people, because most people are pretty agitated these days. And so we found that we have a much wider net than we thought. And since we're working with people they are the protectors, they're the guardians that we work with, and they're, as you all know, I'm sure there's a tremendous stigma around mental health, asking for help. So the way we position it is like, everybody is stuck and we just help you get unstuck, and that it's just expensive to your nervous system to be trying to hold down all of this stuff. And so we find that resonates with people without making them feel like they're broken or something's wrong, so that was sort of the angle that we took on this.
Really appreciate that. I think that's really similar to a lot of Kathleen. I mean, your work is just dynamic in the field and that's why you wrote 4 chapters, right? We all just want to hear so much from you. Could you speak a little bit about, kind of having, that same understanding or experience, any case studies or anything that you really enjoyed, presenting or writing about?
Thank you, Tara. Actually, it's funny because as Jane was talking, I was thinking about the last client that I saw today. And she was really anxious about interacting with her horse because she had had a difficult day at work and she was feeling a lot of stress. And what she is a perfectionist, and she feels like she can't show up with her horse unless she's perfectly regulated and calm and in a good space, and didn't want to damage the relationship. And I kept encouraging her, the horse doesn't need you to be perfect. Perfectionism kills relationships. It's a standard that none of us can attain. The horse needs you to be aware. She just needs you to be aware that you're anxious. And so she finally went into the pasture, and sure enough, her horse, little Appaloosa mare named Spirit, came right on over and said hello. And she's just, tears just streaming, because she learned growing up, if you're not perfect, don't come out of your room until you put yourself back together. And so I just love that horses give us a space to be genuine, to be present, to be messy, and that as long as we're owning that and aware of that and congruent with that, and not projecting that onto the horse and not expecting them to fix us, that there's just a safety in the genuineness and the presence that they offer. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's what came up.
Oh my gosh, yes. You should have just written that down. It's more poetry. I always enjoy listening to you. So Cheryl, we just have a few minutes left. Anybody have any questions for Cheryl or last comments? We want to respect everyone's time. Go ahead. We've got 1 minute.
Okay, last comment. I think when I was young and working with horses, nobody ever taught me about regulation. And I think most people probably, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if anyone ever taught you about this idea that you could regulate your nervous system. I think this is a new idea. And I think this is what horses are so amazing at. People will do things for the horse that they say they can't do for themselves, but they'll do it for the horse and then they learn how to do it. And I feel like this is a really big direction, and that, you know, when we can focus the research around, you know, a particular measure. So I learned many years ago about coherence and ways to measure coherence, but I think that now we're kind of zeroing in on an even more specific nervous system state and figuring out ways that we can teach self-regulation through co-regulation with the horse.
Stacey, sounds like you've got the next grant for HHRF. All
Good.
right. 75,000. Let's raise it. Awesome. Well, Cheryl, any final words? I mean, were you ever nervous? This was a massive undertaking with a million different people. We're so proud and honored that, you know, you just pulled this together, and thank you. Thank you. This is just been
I'm
really
honored too that everyone participated. And, you know, I was never nervous. You can ask Malika, never. I didn't forget to eat for days, and she would bring me peanut butter and jelly, and I'd be like,
Basically, I would just slide peanut butter and jelly over.
That never happened. I will say though, like we've talked so much about learning, I think a huge part of this process is unlearning. It's unlearning a lot of things that we've been stuck on and that we grew up with, and realizing like there's so many ways to do things and so much more to learn.
Okay, mic drop. Boom. 8 o'clock. That was awesome. Hey, so thank you everybody so much. I mean, what a great dialogue. It sounds like this needs to happen more often. So many minds, so many open hearts. What an exciting time in the industry here. You know, follow HHRF on Facebook, you know, share this stuff. You know, the more people that are talking, it sounds like we all really want to listen and learn and share. So, I mean, it's just an honor that we are able to put this together. And thank you, Pebbles, for, you know, constantly putting together amazing webinars and conferences and everything else you do. So thank you, everybody, so much. We're going to let you go. Feel free to start signing off. You know, we kind of just chit chat and have some silly giggles after these types of things. So if you want to be voyeuristic, feel free to stay on.
It'll be fun. Thank you, Tara. Wonderful.
And I would say, authors, if you're willing for folks to reach out to you, put your contact info in the chat. I love the idea that we can really engage folks if they can reach out to us directly. We didn't have that.